It's pretty safe to say that Kendrick Lamar has established himself as one of the most notable rappers of this generation. His rise as an artist has been ripe with thought-provoking tracks and powerful live performances, both of which have uncanny ways of gripping the public's attention. One of the most interesting instances of him falling into the spotlight and stirring up controversy happened in August of 2013 when Big Sean released Control, a track where over the course of 10 seconds, Kendrick calls out 11 other rappers, 2 of which appear on it with him, and sends a pretty strong message.
And that goes for Jamaica, Big Crit Wale, Pusha T, Meek Mills, A$AP Rocky, Drake, Big Sean, Jay Electron, Tyler McMillan. I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you niggas.
The reaction to this was massive, garnering responses from some of the rappers mentioned and far more from the ones who weren't. Of course, the majority of the noise surrounding this came from fans and critics, mostly giving it high praises and in a handful of cases deeming it as one of the most important verses of the decade. A lot of prominent voices shared the sentiment that Kendrick had just changed the course of modern hip-hop. Obviously, Kendrick is not the first person to ever name drop, and he's also far from being the first person to make this claim.
I'm the king of New York, king of the coast, one hand I juggle them both.
In fact, that line itself is a reference to a Krupp lyric from a collaboration they did called Get Busy.
I'm important like the Pope, I'm the king of New York.
And when I said it, nobody said shit. Then when Kendrick said it, everybody wanted to go against the boy.
The potency of Control had very little to do with what was said, or even how it was said, but rather that Kendrick was the one to say it. There's this mythos that has developed around him, painting him as a sort of heroic link between modern and old school hip-hop. The story that Kendrick has been sold on is compelling. This kid from Compton who kept getting pushed around by a city used music as a way out, and with some support and mentoring from West Coast legends like Snoop Dogg, The Game, and Dr. Dre, he pulled together his experiences and expressed them with a fresh yet familiar feeling record. And although that simplified account of his early career certainly contains exaggerations and inaccuracies, it is the narrative that people latched onto, and it's given him credibility. Once Good Kid, Mad City dropped, a lot of people saw Kendrick as the future of hip-hop, so when he seemingly criticized the state of it, they listened. The verse isn't as much of an insult as it is a challenge. Although a lot of headlines spun it as a diss track, Kendrick's statements of wanting to raise the bar and be better than the rest weren't meant to put anyone down, but rather to question their motives. There are so many concessions that artists are pushed into making by labels, and a lot of times it comes at the cost of the music's integrity. But Kendrick's proven that hits can still have substance, so him saying this sort of thing comes from a place of knowledge. This entire verse is about Kendrick not only leaving his mark on hip-hop, but leaving a mark that is uniquely his, and not one compromised by needing to appeal to the mass market. It's a message to his fellow artists to do the same. The names he mentioned are the names of people he expects a lot out of. In fact, most people theorize that the bigger diss was not to be one of the people mentioned, which explains why a lot of those artists responded. For instance, B.O.B. shot back with a track called How to Rap, which among other things mocked Kendrick's flow in songs like Swimming Pools.
Now open your mind up and listen, you niggas. I am the master, the guru, and after I school you, I'm skinning you niggas. You finished, I'm making.
Also, Lupe Fiasco, who made fun of Kendrick claiming to juggle both of the coasts.
And my left foot is in LA, but my right foot is in Spain. Now we all heard what he said, but what he said means we dead, and that shit is insane.
The significance of Control comes from the reaction people had to it. It created a discussion about hip-hop, and even if it was just for a few weeks, proved that rap could still be competitive. Looking at it now, a few years out, it's clear that the verse had a much bigger impact on fans of hip-hop than it did on hip-hop itself. A lot of the artists who Kendrick mentioned have released some of their best work since the song dropped, but to say that was all Kendrick's doing would be more than a stretch. However, it certainly did put them under a microscope, which gave them exposure and raised expectations. To the public, it became important what those artists put out next, and a lot of them lived up to the call. Of course, the artist under the most scrutiny after the song dropped was Kendrick himself, so it was paramount for him to create something that lived up to his claims. To Pimp a Butterfly, while not the album people expected, did this. It received nearly universal respect, further elevated him as an icon who talks about real issues through mainstream music in a way that doesn't feel preachy or overdone. It seems pretty clear that Kendrick wants to make a difference for people the way artists he listened to made a difference for him. And beyond all the name dropping and joking threats, that's what Control's about. Building a legacy.
It's not about actually being the king of whatever coast. It's about leaving a mark as great as Biggie, as great as Pac. But for the most part, it's about how great I want to be at the end of the day. And nobody's going to stop me.